Okay, welcome back. One of the most important things for you to rank on Google's search engine, if you remember, we've spoken about this in the previous section, is the importance of backlinks. Backlinks are the lifeblood of the internet. When the Google crawler crawls through the page, first it looks at the content, looks for any hyperlinks there. Now these links are actually clicked and the destination is reached by the crawler. It reads that page, looks for a link, clicks that, goes to another page, and so on and so forth. That's how Google crawler is able to cover the entire gamut, or at least majority of the website's content through crawling process. There are about 200 different factors that play a role in Google search ranking. If your website has to rank on Google, Google is going to look at about 200 different conditions before it ranks you right there. What are these 200 conditions or checklists? Nobody knows that because Google wouldn't reveal all the 200 different factors. Google, however, gives you very specific set of guidelines. It says that if you followed this, there is a very high probability that your website, your content will rank higher. Now we are going to look at those guidelines and understand how following those guidelines can really have a positive impact on our ranking, on our website ranking on Google. We are going to switch to the Google Webmaster Guidelines. You will be able to see what's happening on the computer screen as we do that. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is open the Chrome browser right here. And then I'm going to search for something like Webmaster Guidelines. Now this is just one phrase, Webmaster Guidelines. You're going to see a result, the first result potentially that says support.google.com. So that's what we are going to click on right now. Now when we get into Webmaster Guidelines, we are going to see two important categories. First one is called General Guidelines. Now General Guidelines are like the do's, okay? Google tells you what are some of the things you're supposed to do on your website. And there is the second category and the more important one, which is called Quality Guidelines. So that's General Guidelines and then Quality Guidelines. General guidelines are the do's. Quality guidelines, you might have guessed it, it's the don'ts. You're not supposed to do certain things, which if you did, Google could potentially penalize your website for. So let's look at some of the general guidelines first, and then we'll switch to the quality guidelines. Now within general guidelines, it's divided into three parts. One is helping Google find your pages. Two, helping Google understand your pages. That's more important. And finally, helping visitors use your pages without hassle. Okay? Now let's look at what Google says about understanding your pages. And this is very important. That's the reason I'm highlighting this. Google actually says that when you create content for your website, don't do it to rank on Google. Google actually says that. Don't write your content for search engines. Instead, you do a good job in terms of creating a content that is useful for your users. So when your website visitors come to check out your website, let there be so much good content that they're going to absolutely love it. Don't worry about search engines, because if you do a good job on your content, get all the value addition done for your users, Google is bound to rank you for that. So if not anything else, if you can take away this one point from this section, that is to create content, not just to rank, but to really, really help your visitors, Google will support you. Okay, so that's the takeaway. First point under Google understanding your pages is one, create a useful, information-rich site where pages are clear and accurate and it's described in the most simplest manner. Keep that in mind. Create content that is useful for your users. It's rich in value, it's informative, and it's clear and accurate. Number two, think about the words users are going to type to find your pages. So we are going to dive deep into this when we do keyword research as a part of on-page SEO in our next section. Just know this, when you go to Google, you search something like baking classes in New York, for example, you're looking for a baking training class or course in the city of New York. Now, your job as a search engine optimizer is to find out what are people actually typing in that search box. Really understand, put yourself in the customer's shoe, use those words inside your content. That way, there is a higher probability of you reaching those customers. This is crucial for your online success, for your search engine ranking success perspective. So always understand what words that your users are using and then use them on your content so that there is a match and your website shows up when they search something. So again, in the next section, we are going to go in depth, really look at what are the different steps that you can take to research how people search on Google, and then that acts like a platform, like a foundation on which you could build your content. Okay, so moving on. Like I told you, we have two sets of guidelines. One is general guidelines and the second one is quality guidelines. So the focus more here is going to be about quality guidelines. What are quality guidelines? Quality guidelines, like I told you, is all about the don'ts, what you're not supposed to do. Okay, some of them are listed right here. But before that, I want to go word by word here. This is like coming right from the horse's mouth, like they say. Google itself is telling these are the guidelines. These are the quality guidelines. If you do any of these illicit practices, your website is going to be in trouble. So even if you did not follow the basic guidelines or the general guidelines, keep an eye on the quality guidelines. Avoid them at all costs. Okay, here we go. Quality guidelines. These quality guidelines cover the most common forms of deceptive or manipulative behavior, but Google may respond negatively to other misleading practices not listed here. It's not safe to assume that just because a specific deceptive technique isn't included on this page, Google approves of it. So Google apparently has listed some illicit practices that you're not supposed to follow. If you did, but if you thought that this is only a limited one and what you're doing is not really listed, and you go ahead and do or use an illicit practice, a deceptive, a manipulative practice on your website, Google is going to catch you. Okay, so this is serious. So we should not get into the black hat practices like I told you. Stick to the guidelines and you're going to be fine. Okay, so what are some of the basic principles within the quality guidelines? Number one, make the pages primarily for the users, not for the search engines. And this is a reiteration of what I already told you. Two, do not deceive your users. Google says, people come to your website for a reason. They're looking for answers. They're looking for information. Number three, avoid tricks intended to improve search engine rankings. A good rule of thumb is whether you would feel comfortable explaining what you've done to the website that competes with you or to a Google employee. Another useful test is to ask, does this help my users? Would I do this if search engines did not exist? So this is a good test, I would say. The reason is when you're creating content, and if you ask yourself, is this content really useful for my customers? In all honesty, I answered that question before I write a piece of content on my website or my client's website. Always ask if the content that you're about to create, is that going to be useful for your users? If your answer is yes, a double thumbs up, you could go ahead and do that. That's the right way to do it. Think about what makes your website unique, valuable, and engaging. Make your website stand out from others in the field. I mean, this goes without saying. If you really want to do well on Google search engine, if your website needs to rank higher, it's very simple. Create good, valuable content for your users. Ask questions. Let people engage with your content. 3, look at your competitors. What are they doing? How can you set yourself apart from the crowd, create amazing value, great content so that people love it? And if people love it, indirectly, Google will absolutely love it. Stay tuned. We are going to go into the next section where we will be talking about very specific illicit practices that you absolutely need to avoid. Hopefully, this was enlightening. Thank you very much. Stay tuned.